In the name of the one holy, risen Lord. Amen. Please be seated. This morning marks St. David's annual meeting, the time we gather to take a look at where we've been and then turn together to face the future. Instead of delivering an uninspiring rector's report about programs and numbers, this morning I propose a State of the Church sermon that takes a look at where we are at St. David's in terms of relationships and community, where we are spiritually. Think of it a little like one of those shopping mall maps with a "You Are Here" marker. I offer you both what I see and what I hope for you. As an outsider who has only walked with you for 4 months, and as an insider who has spent that time closely alongside your leadership, clergy, and staff, and in treasured pastoral relationship with so many of you. If you hear nothing else this morning, please hear this. You are very easy to love. As I've said many times before, you have been well loved. And because of that, you know how to love others. You are a faith community that loves to worship. I have never experienced a church so thoroughly engaged, so enlivened by coming together to sing and pray. Your sanctuaries are arresting. One offering the rootedness of a long history, a physical embodiment of the communion of saints. And this offering the plain majesty of open, crisp space that declutters the soul and helps us to focus on the cross, on the word, on the power of Christian community. Your list of outreach ministries is longer than my arm, and you take so seriously service to the community and beyond. You care for each other. You love to eat and celebrate. You pray for 80 people by name at 4 services every Sunday, and you pray for me every Sunday. You keep bees, you tend the marshes and waterways, you wash gravestones, you spread early mulch on the garden. You voraciously study the Bible. You practice centering prayer. You polish the silver that adorns the altar. St. David's is an inspired, spirit-filled, Jesus-centered community. You are one of a kind. And believe me when I say, the sky is the limit for your future. You are special, and at the same time, you are ordinary, prone to the same seasons, pushes, and pulls as any other church. You are in transition. We've been talking a lot about liminal space these past months, that time between the now and the not yet. That suspended space after we've left behind the world as we knew it, but have not yet arrived to the next reality. Most people experience liminal space as chaotic, disorienting, and anxiety-producing. No one ever asks to be cast out into liminal space. If you'll excuse the one-time use of an inelegant word, liminal space can really suck. At St. David's, you entered liminal space the minute Frank Allen announced his intention to retire as your rector. And liminal space will continue, I am sorry to say, even a year or more into your new rector's tenure. We cannot prevent liminal space from happening. It happens throughout our lives in ways big and small. It happens at church, in our professional lives, among our families and friends. We enter liminal space whenever we suffer a change or a loss, the loss of a dream or an imagined future, perhaps, or the death of a loved one, or the end of a hope or a relationship. If Jesus' own experience reflected in the Gospels tells us anything, we know that liminal space, while heart-wrenching, is at the same time where transformation happens. A while back, I penned a clergy letter about transformation in liminal space, and a parishioner sent back an email that said, "Why do we need to be transformed? Aren't we good enough the way we are?" It was an excellent question. And my response is yes to both and. St. David's is good enough the way it is, as each of us are good too, made in God's image, always worthy, always loved. And as we see throughout the Gospels, Jesus is big on people evolving to become most fully who God calls us to be over time, bit by bit. It takes exactly one lifetime. That doesn't mean we're not good or worthy or enough the way we are. What it means is that Jesus calls us into deeper and deeper and deeper awareness of the divine in our midst. When everything has been thrown up in the air, when we cannot recognize our surroundings for all of the change, it's in those moments that we have the best chance to learn and evolve and grow and deepen. It's in liminal space where our listening is most acute, our reflections most matter, our prayers are most alive, where we can be most open to allowing God to set our hearts on fire. What I am asking you is not to miss the opportunities of liminal space. If we avoid, deny, ignore, rage, run away from, or rush through this potent spiritual moment, we together miss out on a lot of God's grace. We miss out on a chance to evolve. We miss out to go deeper into our spiritual lives. We miss out on strengthening our relationship with the risen Christ. So for those of you who are interested in dipping a toe or two into these spiritual waters, here are some suggestions. First, stay put. It is a natural response when we see things happening in our church with which we don't agree, to take our proverbial marbles and go home. Given the chaotic nature of liminal space, when everything feels like it's coming apart, some of us just aren't up for it. But we are asked, even in this morning's gospel, not to take off, but to abide. For the past few Sundays, we've been reading in church from the Gospel of John. And you may have noticed that abide is a very big word for John, especially in the farewell discourses, as Jesus prepares his friends for the liminal space that awaits them after he's gone. Last Sunday was abide this and abide that. And this week we get, if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. Abide in me, and I abide in you. Now, what is this abide? Quick research reveals it as the Koine Greek word meno, meaning to remain, to wait, to endure, to dwell. How do we hear this commandment differently using its meaning? Remain in me as I remain in you. Endure in me as I endure in you. Dwell in me as I dwell in you. I resonate most with dwell because it evokes images of home, of a strong foundation, of putting down roots and staying, living our lives where we hang our hat. The Jesus of John's Gospels might be speaking to our liminal moment here and now. No one ever said living and ministering within Christian community would be easy. In fact, most of the book of Acts and most of Paul's epistles are about navigating the heartache and conflict of community. And through it all, the message is stalwart. Keep on keeping on. Don't disappear. Abide. Stay put. Listen. Love. Dwell here in this place with these people at this time. Second, do the grief work. I spend a lot of time at work during my work week meeting with you. In my office, in the hospital, in your homes, or walking the church grounds. And what I hear is still a lot of grief and loss in the parish about Frank's retirement, about the loss of his presence in your lives and at St. David's, about missing the way things used to be. And I use the word still not as a judgment, but as an encouragement. Working through grief and loss takes time. It's okay. It's normal. Give grief its due. It's not something we need hide from each other or from your interim rector or the staff or the clergy or the vestry or each other. It is part of the bones, part of the DNA of St. David's in this liminal moment. There's no way through it, but through it. In her masterpiece, Late Migrations, essayist Margaret Rankel understands working through grief in this way. Here is what no one told me about grief, she says. You inhabit it like a skin. Everywhere you go, you wear grief under your clothes, and it will change in time. It will change so slowly you won't even see it happening. Time claims you. Your hair grays, the skin on the top of your hand goes loose, and the skin of your grief too will loosen, soften, forgive your sharp edges. You are waking into a new shape. You are waking into an old self. What I mean is, she writes, time offers your old self a new shape. What I mean is, you are the old, ungrieving you, and you are also the new, ruined you. You are both, and you will always be both. There is nothing at all to fear. Working through grief takes time, and it also takes community. Sociologist David Kessler tells us that each person's grief is unique as their fingerprint. But what everyone has in common is that no matter how we grieve, we share a need for our grief to be witnessed. That doesn't mean needing someone to try to lessen it or reframe it for us. The need is for someone to be fully present to the magnitude of loss without trying to point out the silver lining. So take this liminal time to talk about grief, to study it, learn from it, tell each other about it. This community is strong enough to witness one another's grief, to hear its story without trying to fix it. And finally, one last select suggestion for spiritual work. Liminal space is the time to learn how and then practice letting go. I left this suggestion for last because this kind of work is the hardest one. Personally, I struggle with it mightily and daily, with this kind of spiritual discipline. In the words of David Foster Wallace, everything I've ever let go of has claw marks on it. It's so very hard to do. But as long as we think we've got to fix everything, control everything, explain everything, understand everything, know everything, we will never be a peaceful people. Parker Palmer calls this functional atheism, as in nothing good can happen without me doing it, or controlling it, or fixing it. Because really, isn't it about God and God's grace? Isn't it about our faith in a God that heals all things, renews all things, redeems all things? What would it look like if we trusted God's goodness enough to let go of old hurts and resentments? What would it look like if, when participating in making an important decision, we set our peace from a place of discernment and prayer, and then let go of the outcome? What would it look like if we let go of our illusion of self-sufficiency and self-determination and handed ourselves over to the knowledge that we owe our very lives to the mercy of God? In the end, everything boils down to gratitude and trust for our loving, present, compassionate God. As we find ourselves for a long time doing our best to stand together in the shifting sands of liminal space, we are grateful for who we are in this place at this time, and grateful for the opportunity God gives us to deepen relationship and connection with Him and with one another. My deepest hope for you is that when you do arrive safely on the other side of this roiling sea, you do so strengthened, grounded, renewed, and transformed. My hope for you is that to God you'll be able to confidently declare, "For all that has been, thank you. For all that is to come, yes." Amen.